we're seeing now a lot in societies that people don't just want to come to work and put on the work face of LaTerrica, but I want to bring the Southern LaTerrica
Yeah.
to work. I want to bring who I am outside of just the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, because it's taking a toll on people.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode. As always, I am so grateful to be here with you because I know that without you all, my listeners, there is no podcast. So thank you for being with me for another episode. And of course, before I get started, if you have not already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you don't want to miss these amazing interviews I'm having with these amazing people. Okay. And especially today. So that segues me right on in to my guest today. And let me tell you a little something about how I met this sister right here. You know, a couple, that's not been a couple of years ago. I think at the time of this podcast it'll be almost a year ago. I was asked to speak at a conference at the ERG. For those who don't know, ERG is Employee Resource Group Alliance, Global ERG Alliance Conference. And I was partnered with an ERG leader inside of an organization. And it was this beautiful sister right here. And from the moment we connected, it was like fireworks. We just vibed and had the best conversations. And we got to collab in a workshop on psychological safety, which is her one of her like main areas of focus. So LaTerrica Moore, she is an inclusion partner with Medica, and she is I don't know if I can say this. You can tell me to edit it out if not. She is on the path to a doctorate. She's on the path to a doctorate, and I'm very excited to have her. So we've kept in touch ever since. We had an amazing workshop together, and I asked her, like I said, we've got to have a conversation. Every conversation we have had offline has been word podcast worthy. So I was like, we got to take this online and we have to have a podcast. So welcome to the show, LaTerrica. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for that warm, loving introduction. And yeah, you're not lying. Like when we ever meet, it's always some kind of podcast. We like end up having these deep conversations and we're like, how do we get here? So I am so grateful to be here officially
Yes.
for this, amazing podcast that you have.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I like my listeners to get to know my guests. And so if you would just, give us a formal introduction, like who you are, where you're from, what your official role is, and like kind of like how you got to be where you are and how you came to have this passion for psychological safety. And by the way, if you're listening, you're probably seeing the title behind Human Potential. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence and human resources. And you got to know already that psychological safety is a huge part of that. So
Yes.
yeah, give us the rundown.
Yeah, so again, hello everyone, light and love to you all. I am LaTerrica Moore. I am a licensed social worker by practice and by trade, but I have transitioned into working into human resources and doing some DEI strategy. If hopefully by this time we're still able to call it that.
Right, right.
But within my organization, I typically help to cultivate an inclusive environment, and that's around culture and climate, because we know a culture and a climate of an organization are two different things.
Mhm.
So, making sure that folks feel both seen, heard, and they feel supported in the work that they do within the organization. So, that's a little bit about what I do professionally. I will just share. Personally, I am a Southern Belle through and through. I don't know how I have plucked myself here in the Midwest, but I am a Southern Belle straight out of South Mississippi who is here in the Midwest just trying to understand how societal organizations, how the world around us can really affect the workplace and really affect the people who are in these workplaces. I tell people all the time, since I've shifted and transitioned into human resources, is that those two words are so critical and key, human and resources. And it's not
Mhm.
just the humans that are in the organization, it's the humans behind the resources,
Mhm.
that those who are working for the company, who are getting, the benefits of the company and organization, those resources and tools that they need to thrive,
Mhm.
both professionally but personally as well. Because we're seeing now a lot in societies that people don't just want to come to work and put on the work face of LaTerrica, but I want to bring the Southern LaTerrica
Yeah.
to work. I want to bring who I am outside of just the 9 to 5, Monday through
Yeah.
Friday, because that is taking a toll on people. So I'm grateful that I get to be in a space to do this work with
Yeah.
people, and to be a people person. I'm a huge people person. I'm an ambivert, so I don't recharge on interacting with people, but I thrive and I love being
Yeah.
around people and supporting them and just listening to their stories and their lived experiences.
Yeah. I love everything about that, and I think that's why we connected is and I love the fact that, there's this crossover with your work as a social worker and your work in human resources, and we've kind of talked about that a little bit on offline because
Mm.
what a unique combination, but an undervalued combination, because the lens that you bring is just what human resources needs. And I
Yes.
love that you said it's not just the humans, but the resources, that the humans behind the resources, not just the humans inside of the organizations as well. So that's just so. And so what occurs for me is as we're like, leaning into this topic of we're leaning into this space of human resources is the emotional intelligence in organizations. And I'd love to hear from you, sort of like what do you feel is the current state, um, of human resources, like as it pertains to this whole concept of EQ and why it's necessary in this domain?
Yeah, I trying to think of the best way to approach it, because I do think and see in this space that we are in of human resources is
Mhm,
people are tending to keep that EQ piece out of it. And I know we keep hitting that psychological safety, but psychological safety is a piece of that too. And when I think about EQ and HR specifically, I think about the people who are, let's say, for example, because we all know that human resources is a plethora of different people and different mechanisms of the organization. And I personally didn't know that until I started working in human resources. And I understand that there's a different team that does payroll than the team that does interviews, and the team
mhm,
that does employee orientation, and the team that does, business partnership with our community members and the internal folks. So, and to understand EQ and HR, I think you need to understand that there are several mechanisms that are working within human resources.
mhm,
And so, for that, there are so many people who miss out on just truly understanding what is emotional intelligence. And
mhm.
then the two-part piece to that is, what does it look like for me and how do I convey that? But then also, how do I understand and receive that from other people? And I
Yeah,
think we are missing that, and that's why I'm really big on getting back to the human in
yes.
HR. And that's a testament to moving into this world of acronyms. And
Yeah.
so we use HR so much,
Mhm,
HR, but
mhm,
HR is human
mhm.
resources. And
That's right.
so you can't not have a functioning and thriving HR department without speaking and understanding emotional intelligence.
Yeah. It's so interesting as you said it a couple of times, like human and resources. It occurs to me to even break that down. I mean, we got there's the human, like the
Yeah.
beings that we are, and the humanity inside
Mm,
of that, right? All that comes with our humanity, our thoughts and our emotions and our life circumstances, our various backgrounds, and
yes.
just situations and our values and our dreams. Like that's all that we as humans encompass. But then there's the resources and what occurs to me, what I know to be true in terms of like trauma informedness and being, we talked a little bit about the touching on of trauma informed leadership. Girl, we could go all over the place, but I'm gonna try to rein it in. But like in trauma, one of the things that prevents toxic stress from becoming trauma is people feeling resourced.
Yes.
When you talk about culture and climate, which in a minute, I'm gonna backtrack to that. But like when you talk about people being in feeling seen and feeling heard and feeling valued, one of the ways that it occurs for me is that they feel resourced. And so think about human and resources
Yes.
and all kinds of resources like the support and the scaffolding, the things you need and the people you need,
Yes.
right? And access, you know, and not just access inside the building, but what's happening to get you to the building, right?
Yes.
Resources. And so it just opens my mind, especially talking to you and knowing the lens you're coming from, you know, this whole idea of human resources. And before I
Mm.
backtrack to culture versus climate, I just want to address the wider audience because there may be some people that's like, you know, wanting to sort of tune out and say, well, you know, I'm not in HR. Or, no, I don't, I don't have. Consider that in your household, that you have a human resources department. Just like consider thinking about what that is inside of your own family,
Yes.
human resources, and how you resource people, right? Consider in the community in which you practice your faith, if you practice a faith, that there's human and there's resources.
Yes.
Consider if you're in sports, there's human and there's resources. If you're in school, there's humans and there's resources. So I
Yes.
just kind of want to pan it out because, yes, organizationally speaking, we're talking about a department which is vast and has many different layers. And for those who may not be in corporate and may not be, or in corporate, but not be in HR or human resources, considering your homes, you have
Yes.
humans and you have resources. So I just wanted to
No,
widen the perspective on that.
I absolutely love that because, and a piece of that I'll share is I think about families, right? Like I come from a large family, and I just think about the aspect of you cannot treat everyone in your family the same. You have to have the emotional intelligence to meet them where they are, and then to also communicate to them to meet you where you are.
Mm.
And so I think my mom and dad, it's five of us as siblings. They don't treat all of us the same.
Mhm.
They may give us the same love, the same
Mhm.
care and nurture,
Mhm.
but it might look different on Tuesday for me than it does look on Thursday for my brother or in the afternoon for my sister.
Yeah.
So I love that you have laid that framework for people
Mhm.
because human resources, it's not just about organizational structure and systems.
Yes.
Everywhere you go, you are a living, breathing human resource to those you come across in life.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness, this is taking this somewhere I didn't even imagine. Okay, okay, let's talk about. Well, first, I would love for you to distinguish because it occurred to me to ask you this. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. Forgive me, audience. I do this sometimes. Can you distinguish culture and climate? Because you did mention there's a difference.
Yeah. So I've been actually doing a lot of research on this because people talk a lot about what your workplace culture is, and here at our organization, this is the culture we have. So we all know that culture is this full of what traditions, beliefs, values that people may have, right? But climate is that piece of feel. So thinking about temperature wise.
Mm,
So your culture is what are the traditions, the values, the insights, the customs that you have at your organization, right? Like an example could be here at our company, our culture is having people feel seen and heard and community volunteerism and going out and supporting those different organizations, right? Like that's the culture of an organization.
mhm,
But climate is that feeling, it's like that temperature base. So what are people who are interacting with the employees of your company, what are they feeling about your culture? How
mhm,
are the employees who are getting this culture from a top down approach, how do they feel when they come to work? Like what is that feeling of engagement to your culture? So that's kind of how like culture and climate have been defined and research, and they're doing more research on this too, right? Because
mhm.
you think climate and you're like, well, I'm not trying to do no climate change. But when you think about climate collaborating with culture, they
Yeah.
work hand in hand. And
Yes.
you can't understand. the culture of your organization if you don't understand how the people interacting, how they feel when they come across it. Because you can say all day long that our culture is love and volunteerism
Mhm.
and integrity, but
Mhm.
what are the people who are interacting with your organization? Are they feeling that it's integratable? Are they feeling that there's love? Are they feeling that it's
Yes.
volunteerism? So that's the kind of breakdown of culture and climate and how that looks like. And I'll share how I got to that discussion of what the two is
Mhm.
I've been in a couple roles and opportunities in my life where I've been a number, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys can see or know this, but I just so happen to be a beautiful black woman.
Yes.
And so I've been in jobs where I've been a number. And you talked about this a little bit earlier in being a number, aka resourced, but being a
Right.
number for an organization. And so if you tell me that your culture is in inclusivity and diversity and equity, that's great that that's your culture, but as a person, I'm feeling like a number. So your
Mm.
climate and your culture is not aligning. And so I try to understand, like, what is this feeling of being a number? How does this correlate to what a organization's culture is? So since I have understand that those are differences, trying to make sure that people understand, okay, you can't talk about what our culture is here without understanding what the folks are feeling when it comes to the climate of the organization.
Ooh, climate. You know what it reminds me of? Intention versus impact,
Yes,
right? Like the
exactly.
culture is the intention, what we
Yes.
want it to be, what we intend it to be, and the impact is what it actually is, the climate and what the
Yes.
people are experiencing and feeling. That is, ooh, that's rich. That's beautiful. And I think it's, coming back to, like, taking it in different contexts, I think that is so valuable in family units.
It is.
I'm in this conversation with my son right now about intention versus impact, right? Just, bringing awareness to what he says and how he says it, and understanding that he may not mean it a certain way, but it may impact him a certain way. And then having him hold me accountable for a similar thing, which is something my
Yes.
parents never did, allowed me to do, I should say, to hold them accountable, right? And so, because I may say something in a certain tone, and he's like, "Oh, well, are you mad at me? Because it sounded like you were mad at me." And then I'm like, "Oh, that's not what I meant, but I
Mhm.
acknowledge that that's what it made you feel like. So let me change my tone," kind of thing, right? So we could, as parents, we could have a culture and values, but what is the climate of the household?
Yes.
And is that climate of the household harmful or empowering to the child?
Mm,
Right. And so I just wanted, I like to, my listeners know, I like to take it in, put it in multiple contexts so people can be like,
yes.
because I say how you do anything is how you do everything.
And
You
how
know
you
what
show
I'm saying?
up in these workspaces is how you show up at home. And
That's right.
I love that you do that with your son because I was, again, as a social worker, take all kinds of classes. And in
Hmm.
one of my child development classes, my teacher said something once and it stuck with me. She shared, as adults, you know what it's like to be 5 and 12 and 15 and 9, but your child has no absolute idea what it is like to be the age that you are. And
Wow.
so that approach that you're sharing of intent versus impact, or culture versus climate, like you can be a family that says we value communication and getting out in the community. Okay, and the moment your child comes home and they effectively communicate with you that you harmed them with your words or your actions, that moment of your response, if you lash out at them, or if you say, wow, I appreciate the emotional intelligence that you have to
Hmm.
share with me where you're feeling right now and to communicate that with me.
That's
And
right.
that right there isn't a space to really set to really share, like, what is the culture and climate of my family.
Hmm.
Because if you're quick to again lash out at that child, then
Hmm.
you can't say that your family values are communication and stuff, because you're not effectively communicating with that child.
That's
Because
right.
again, they don't know what it's like to be an adult who's have a stressful day at work and
Hmm.
have had their boss or the
Hmm.
organization get on their tail. They don't know what that's like. But you
Yeah.
know what it's like to be in fifth grade and having a stressful day because you missed a math problem, but
Right.
you know your parents want or guardian wanted you to do so well on that test, or
Right.
you didn't get to go to PE that day because your shoelaces were untied and you
Right.
missed out on scoring the home run for the
Right.
baseball team in PE. You understand, we as adults, we understand those mechanisms that make kids kids, but
Mhm,
they don't know what that's like for us. And so being very intentional about, again, what is the structure and climate
mhm,
and culture of your family, because it goes a long way. And how you show up in, again, I think we're saying all of this because
mhm.
there's no splitting the two. We can say
That's
all
right.
day long how there's work Laterica and then there's home Laterica. That
Mhm.
may be true, but at the end of the day, those core values that make you a human,
Right.
those are what shows up in the resources and sources around you in your everyday life.
Yes, yes. Girl. Okay, so we've been talking around it, but I want to get into it. I want to sort of like define it because we're going to talk around it even more. And I would even go as far to say this. We're going to define it, but would go as far to say that emotional intelligence is a human resource.
It is.
It is a human resource. Let's talk about it. Like, you know, how would you define emotional intelligence?
Hmm. I would personally say, like, having the awareness of one, understanding and identifying the emotions around you, but then also being able to understand them within you. And that's a piece that I think people tend to miss out on when we talk about emotional intelligence. People
Mhm,
can say all day long, I'm really great at picking up on people. Like me personally,
mhm.
I don't know what it is, but I am the person who could randomly be in Walmart and someone come up to me and they have a whole life therapy session. I don't know if something about my face says I'm a therapist, but people can come and then I can pick up and sense the emotions of people.
Mhm,
And people will normally stop at that and say, "Wow, you have such great emotional intelligence." But there's more to that. The piece that I want to stress and express is when that person then leaves from expressing their emotions, their feelings and thoughts to me, how does that then leave me feeling? Am I
mhm,
someone who then takes upon all of those emotions and carries it for myself, and then
mhm,
before I know it, the rest of the day I'm sad and I'm not sure
mhm.
why I'm sad? Well, I'm
Right.
sad because this person just spilled their whole life to me.
Mhm,
But if you have the emotional intelligence to go, okay, I associate that this person emotions right now is sadness, is grievance,
mhm,
but right now I'm currently feeling empathetic for them, I'm feeling the
mhm,
compassion for them, so
mhm,
I can identify and have those boundaries
mhm.
that separate my feelings from their feelings, and I can understand and really be able to identify whose is whose and what's mine and
Yeah,
what's the other person's. And that goes back to HR, right?
yeah.
Being a human resource, you might have someone come and express to you a grievance on the job with the leader. Do you then take those emotions that that person share with you, and when you share with your leader, this is what happened with Laterica and she shared she's upset about this comment that was made. Okay, when you're writing that report, are you writing it from a place of emotion from what that person shared? Or are
Mhm.
you writing it from a place of, complete understanding and transparency? So
Yeah.
that's a very long winded way
Yeah,
of
no.
defining and kind of explaining, from my perspective, like what I think emotional intelligence is.
Mhm,
And I don't think it's something you just can. I think there might be people who are just born with some great emotional intelligence.
mhm.
Do truly think that lived experiences really allows you to understand the depths of emotional intelligence. Like there is something to say, and I will share this. I am not the same person that I was when I started this journey of social work and
Yes.
therapy. I am not that same person at all
Mhm,
whatsoever that I am now. But I will share my emotional intelligence has grown
mhm.
because of the things that I've gone through, I've lived through, I've had to experience and witness because of that.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love everything that you said and even all of the examples. I will piggyback on that. I think also when we think about emotional intelligence, like just be like you said, being able to like identify the emotion and what it's doing within you, I think honoring it because in my generation, we were taught like emotions are bad unless you're
Yeah.
happy, right? So push it down. So then not like not being able to identify the emotion or what it's doing inside of your body and feel like, well, what is this thing happening in my body? And then when we realize it's an emotion, not immediately pushing it down. So like that emotional
Mm,
honesty and
yes.
honoring. But then also, and this is what I see it can be a problem, is emotional regulation, like what are the tools to regulate yourself
That
so that
part.
you can communicate and could be able to communicate your emotions from a place of equanimity. So, like,
Mm,
the
yes,
the regulation part, you might need to step away. What do you need to do when you identify what's going on in your body and the emotion? You may not be in a space to talk about it. You may need to be like, all right, this conversation's over, or I need to step out, or whatever. But
yes,
then coming back and being able to say, listen, when this happened, I felt very disrespected, or I felt very, frustrated or angry, or sad, or whatever it
right.
is, right? And then I think part of in organizations specifically, but I think this happens in families as well, is that emotions are sort of dismissed as not important, especially in the workplace. Like,
Yes,
leave your emotions at the door, and I think that is very, very harmful. But I know that happens in families too, because I grew up in that kind of family where, sort of leave your emotions at the door, or feel them quietly. And
yes,
so I think to add to what you're saying, like just being able to like find the tools, or learn the tools. And I think you're right. Like, I don't think that people are born necessarily. Some people may be born with emotional intelligence. I do. Well, okay, I'm gonna take that back. I think babies
mm,
are incredibly emotionally intelligent,
same.
and then they get socialized out of it.
Mm,
And so we need to reconnect with that innate emotional intelligence.
yes.
And people can learn to do that. People can learn to do that. And so I think it's incredibly important in human resources.
Yes. Well, and then when you think about babies, it's authentic, right? Like
Mhm.
that's their authentic, raw emotions that they're expressing, that they're sharing. And I love all that you shared. And I was just one, I was thinking of two things. Of course, one, I was thinking of Inside Out
Yeah. Oh,
from
yes. Yes.
Disney.
Yes.
I was thinking of that movie and how, as an adult, I cried so much from one and two
Me
because
too.
it was so, yeah, just yeah. But I also was thinking of the aspect and the piece of limiting your emotions, right? Like
Mhm.
we live in a society where people are quick to only express and allow certain emotions.
That's
So
right.
we allow happiness.
Mhm.
We allow for you to be mad. We allow
Mhm.
for you to be sad. We limit it to just those main ones, but there's
Mhm.
so many more. And again, I was thinking about Inside Out. Like
Yeah.
you have the main ones, but then boom, this new dashboard comes along
Right.
and you learn that okay, I can be frustrated but not necessarily angry,
Right.
or I can be a little aggrieved, but not necessarily sad.
Right. Like emo.
Yeah, like, but I'm not like down in the dumps, like I'm still
Right.
going to work. So
Right.
I think about that in this space of when people express, right? Like I'm hurt. Okay, what is hurting you?
Mhm.
When you share that you hurt, are you hurt from this? Are you hurt from
Mhm.
that? And that goes back to like what you were sharing in, and it's not just about expressing I'm sad today. Okay, well, what from today has made you sad? And they
Mhm.
do this a lot in therapy and like
Mhm.
really trying to get it out of people, but
Yeah.
it's really to get to the core of the emotion. Because if you just say you're sad, well, 14 things could have happened today. Was it the song that you listened to? Was it,
Mhm.
the In the Arms of the Angel animal commercial that you saw 5 minutes ago? Like there's so many things that could have made you sad. But let's get to the core of where and what your sadness is so then you can communicate. Like you said, hey, I'm feeling sad today. And maybe it's the simple approach of I
Mhm.
don't know where it's coming from, but I know I need time to understand and process that. And I
Yeah.
think that to what you were sharing is that deeper level of emotional intelligence. And I'm now thinking of the iceberg that we spoke about in our workshop.
Yes.
About the iceberg being a component to emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
right? Like the surface
Absolutely.
level is the things that you share and you see,
Mhm.
but underneath that is being able to communicate. I am frustrated today with how you spoke those words to me.
Mhm.
I'm going to need time to really express what that looks like.
Yeah.
Or when you said in the meeting and called me out, blah 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 about the time commitment, but didn't
Mhm.
share the amount of time you gave me. I'm upset
Mhm.
about that. I need
Yeah.
time to process that. Maybe in our
Yeah.
next one-on-one I can share that.
Right.
Or let's reel it into families, right?
Mhm.
I don't appreciate that you share you were taking me to Dairy Queen to get ice cream tonight and you didn't take me. Your commitment on words do not line, mom,
Right.
dad,
Right.
grandma, uncle, aunt. I'm gonna need time to circle back and let you
Right.
know how I feel. That's that under layer of that, like that iceberg
Yeah.
image that I'm thinking of, like
Yeah.
being able to really share what that emotion is. But then that other piece, spin the block around, how people can support you in that
Listen.
time with you. So how can they support you while you're feeling that anger or you're feeling that, sadness or
Mhm.
happiness, right? Because
Mhm.
one thing that I do want to share and emphasize out of this is, one, emotions aren't bad,
Yeah.
and two, as humans who have the resources and the sources around us,
Mhm.
that's a piece of human resources, right? Is being able to share the emotions,
Mhm.
whether they're good, bad, ugly, whatever they may be.
Mhm.
As a human, being able to share those emotions with those around you is a resource to people who love you, who care about you. And I think we miss out on that a lot when we
Yeah.
think about human resources and when we think about emotional intelligence.
So much there, so much there. So I'm going to start where I'm going to begin where you just ended, which is emotions are not bad. Emotions are data points. And we
Yes.
begin to see emotions as data points, including inside of organizations. It'll help us to recognize where we are missing the mark on what we're intending to do. Like our impact and our intention aligned, right? So
Yes.
emotions are data points and our information. And I think even for ourselves, like that's one of the things that I've learned as I've cultivated my own EQ or emotional intelligence is when I'm feeling an emotion, it is information. And what information is it? What is it telling
Yes.
me? And so coming back to what you were talking about, like how can people support those who are experiencing their emotions? And it made me think about, the emotional intelligence. So there's the emotional intelligence to be able to say, like you said you was going to get me that ice cream. We were going to Dairy Queen, but then the emotional intelligence from the flip side is the acknowledgement of that person's emotions. So when you
Yes.
bring it back into like even the organization and someone comes to an HR professional, or going to your colleague and the person is feeling some kind of way, to be able to acknowledge and name, like, wow, I hear I hear your frustration,
Yes.
right? The emotional intelligence to be able to hold space for the
Mm.
humanity that walks in the room and stay regulated and not let someone else's emotions throw you off kilter, right? And
Yes.
this is not even, so this leaves out the background of trauma and how people can become activated by other people's activation if they
Mm.
do not have that level of awareness,
Yes.
right? And so there's so many levels to it. So when you have someone comes to you and says, I'm upset. My son comes to me and says, I'm upset, I've had a bad day, or the way you said that hurt my feelings, then the emotionally intelligent me would say, "Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. How specifically did that hurt your feelings? And I apologize
Yes.
that I hurt your feelings. Can you tell me what I said or how I said it? How that occurred to me? Because then that gives me the information to be able to shift and change that." Or kind of like your early example, if someone comes to an HR professional and expresses a grievance, when the HR person writes up the report, like, are they emotionally regulated to be able to write up the report relatively objectively, because total
Yes.
objectivity doesn't exist, right? But to be able to step into that third position of objectiveness, of the observer point of view, and write the report from that point of view, while in the moment acknowledging the person's emotions and
Yes.
and acknowledging, okay, what is this bringing up in me? And so that's sort of like that triangle of emotional intelligence that you're speaking of. I just, like, there was so much in what you said. I really love
Mm.
that.
There was so much in what you just shared too. That was chicken noodle soup for the soul good.
Girl, don't be having Jack Canfield come after me. Yes, that was good. See, this is what we do. This is why you needed to be on this podcast, because we could just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And so, I want to shift just a little bit, not a whole lot, but as we talk about emotional intelligence as a human resource, I want to just like touch up on it being like that we are all human resources, and the value of emotional intelligence in leadership.
Mm, mm. I love that because I've been, and I spoke to you about this earlier a little bit about trauma informed leadership
Mhm,
and how, so statistically speaking, and I'm saying this because I just did some research for a potential paper, but 70% of US adults have experienced some kind of traumatic, some kind of trauma event in their life.
mhm,
And so when you think about that, have you can't have people out here leading, and I say people out here leading because we are all some kind of leader in
that's
our
right.
own way, whether that be in our families, whether it be in our communities, on our job, whatever it may be. At some point in all of our lives, we will have to lead. And so we truly cannot lead well or any kind of effective way when not having some kind of trauma informed awareness. And
Mhm,
I'm not even saying like being able to be theologically advanced in it, but having some kind of surface level awareness of what
mhm,
trauma informed leadership is, and really
mhm,
thinking, you know, for me, when I think about leadership, it isn't necessarily about control, it's about
mhm,
care.
mhm.
And so when you think about being a trauma informed leader, you're leading with the utmost care. You're
Right.
not leading with trying to control your team. You're thinking about and acknowledging the widespread of those on your teams, what they're going through at home, what they're
Mhm,
going through in their community, and then how are they bringing that to work. You're prioritizing and you're creating spaces. We talk about in ERGs and human and employee resource groups,
yeah.
we talk a lot about creating both brave and safe spaces.
Mhm,
But as a leader, how are you creating those brave and safe spaces on your team for your team members, right? So I,
mhm,
I think about fostering and encouraging and cultivating this empowerment in people to really bring themselves to work and thrive. And so acknowledging that trauma exists and that there might be something that happened all the way 14 jobs ago for someone on your team, and
mhm,
the very tone that you gave to them might be a triggering factor to
mhm,
them. Or
mhm.
I like to associate trauma to, of course, as in the field of therapy and the brain, how it works, it could all relate to our senses, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a certain smell. You're in a meeting and
Mhm,
maybe you have your diffuser on and it's a lavender lemon mix, but maybe
mhm,
someone on your team, maybe they have some kind of trauma that
mhm,
correlates the smell of lemon to
mhm,
an event that they happen. So being even aware of those surface level things,
mhm,
and then to go back to what you shared with emotional intelligence, okay, LaTerrica on my team came and expressed to me that the way I expressed, her tardiness to a meeting, it was harmful for her.
mhm,
Now, what can I do as a leader to support her best?
mhm.
How can not only am I acknowledging the feeling, the trauma that she's experienced, but then now I'm taking it a step further to see how, as a leader, I
Mhm.
can really prioritize her well being to then further create, environments of safety and well being for her.
Yeah, yeah. And the reality is, when leaders do that, and when employees and teams feel cared for and seen, they want to stay. They
Yes.
want to stay, and they want to bring their best selves to work, and they have the space to innovate and to create. And I think that's a missing understanding inside of organizations. They feel like, oh, for we go into this woo woo, feely, ishy gushy type of thing, then that's not going to make the people productive. But in fact, it will, because there's the balance, right? So you can have trauma informed leadership and emotional intelligence, and you can still have boundaries and policies and goals and structure. Like the two can exist. One doesn't cancel out or invalidate the other. And I think that goes with organizations, and it goes with families, because I sure do have boundaries. Like my son and I, he comes home every day and does two chores. And but then we have playtime. We go and we play
Yes.
with the robots, or we go and we play, we Beyblade together, or we do a lot of fun things together. But at the end of the day, he knows this is the time that he goes to bed. This is what he needs to do before he goes to bed. This is, like there's structure, there's boundaries. He knows it is a parent-child relationship. And so while I'm
Yes.
friendly, I am one of his little friends, right? Like that's the thing I have had to share
Yes.
with him a couple of times when, he's preteeny. So, he gets a little preteen, what do you call it? Vibrato. And I'm like, no, sir, son, I am still your mother.
Yes.
And, I honor your feelings. You can feel what you feel, but it is not okay for you to speak to me in that kind of tone. So, like,
Yes.
this is the saying I have: I may be friendly, but I am not one of your little friends. I am your mother,
Yes.
and this is what I expect. I expect this
Mm.
level of respect, and so, like, you can have both, right?
Yes.
And so I
Absolutely.
think that's important for people to recognize, is that just because you have emotional intelligence and you acknowledge and you have trauma informed leadership and you express your emotions, doesn't mean that you don't also have structure, and that you don't also have goals and
Yes.
those types of things, and boundaries and rules and policies and procedures and things of that
Yes.
nature. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of that too, to just piggyback off what you shared, is harmful behavior, right?
Hmm.
Like making sure that you can express all of these feelings. Like you said with your son, like him being able to express to you how he feels. The
Hmm.
harmful behavior is then treating you like one of his little friends, or having a certain tone that
Hmm.
is not of parent child. So it's the
Hmm.
same with your job. You're
Hmm.
not going to, you're going to express your grievances, but you're not going to have harmful behavior
Hmm.
then once you express the emotions. But again, I think that's a part of
Hmm.
emotional intelligence,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
having the awareness of this is the emotion and this is where the emotion and the action cut off, because I
Right.
don't want my emotions to cause some form of harmful
Mm.
behaviors.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Girl, look, this has been rich, rich, rich. I'm going to run down some of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation. So, we talked about this intersection between emotional intelligence and human resources. And so, one of the things I'm taking away is human and resource, and that we are all human resources in every areas of our life. We are human
Yes.
and we are all resourcing. And I'm taking away this aspect of emotional intelligence actually being a human resource. Those are like the two big takeaways that are just blowing my mind right now. Is there anything else you would want the audience that's listening to take away in addition to that?
I think the only thing that I would share, like I've listened to a many and plethora of your podcasts, and I shared earlier with you about your conversation with Jasmine on, leading with love and
Mhm,
an opened
mhm,
eyes to
mhm,
it opened my eyes honestly to the four-letter word of love. I
mhm,
don't think I really understood how love can show up in work, and that's an
mhm.
emotion, right?
That's
we
right.
don't we don't think about how love can show up in that form. And so I really want to kind of bring it back to the theme of emotional intelligence and psychological safety. But
Mhm.
psychological safety is love. It's
Mm,
love in action at work, right? So it's
mm,
not just this fluffy,
mhm.
feeling or anything. It's truly foundational when you think about human resources. So
Yeah.
it's really how organizations can create teams that
Mhm,
don't just perform, but it goes back to that point that you were sharing, where they can connect, where they can innovate, and where they can heal. So
mhm.
that's probably my takeaway, is that love is an emotion. And so love is the foundation of psychological safety, people.
Ooh wee. Well, I tell you what, this conversation has been so rich, and it has been a gift. I want to ask you, if people want to get in touch with you, follow you on social media, ask you to speak, where would they find you?
So I'm a newbie, everyone. I'm still pretty early in my career profession, as I keep saying. But the best way is to probably connect with me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I'm a millennial with no social media besides TikTok and LinkedIn.
Okay.
So if you want to find me, come find me on LinkedIn. I am happy and open to connecting with other humans and sharing resources with you all.
Yes, yes. And look, invite her to speak too. Putting her on the spot. Thank you so much, LaTerrica, for this conversation. It was such a gift to me. I this is why I love podcasting, because I feel like we take these concepts and we break them down and we make them real, and we take them to places where, in left to my own devices, I wouldn't necessarily take it. So together, it's like we generate a new
Yes.
conversation. So I very much appreciate you for being here, for being saying yes, and for this amazing conversation.
No, thank you again. I'm so excited and grateful to be part of this conversation.
Yay. So you all heard it. Connect with LaTerrica on LinkedIn. We will have all of her information in the show notes, and go and leave a review. All right. Leave a review, because see, this is what I always say. When you leave a review, you not only let us know that we are providing the type of content that you want to hear. We're providing value in
Mm.
our podcast episodes, but also you're letting the people behind you, coming behind you, know that they really do need to take a listen, that this is going to bless them. And so please find it in your heart and in your time to actually leave us a 5-star review, and share the episode with a friend, with a family, with a colleague, because this is how we create ripples in movements, in these, just from these conversations, right? This is how cultures get shifted inside and outside of the home. So we're change makers here, and if these conversations don't get shared, then the ripples just fade away. All right, so thank you again, LaTerrica, and thank you to our listeners for being with us every week. Remember to hit the subscribe button if this is your first time listening. And until the next time we see you, stay empowered.